Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Well, we're approaching 10 minutes after 7 o'clock now as we turn our attention to talk HR with HRMAB, one of those experiences we always look forward to every Wednesday morning here on Morning Barbados. So if you're a practitioner of human resources, if you're a supervisor, if you're the manager, if you're just a housewife or the husband, then these are segments that you need to pay close attention to and adapt accordingly. Today we want to take a look at corporate culture and its impact on the employee experience. What's that about? Joining us to talk about it is Nicholas Roberts, the Vice President of HRMAB, and with him is Dr. Lemar White, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Strategist and Adjunct Professor. Gentlemen, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Christian.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with definitions. Definitions I want to get out of the way first. What is organizational culture and what is employee experience? Dr. Lemar, perhaps you can start.
Sure. So organizational culture pertains to the values, expectations, and practices that guide and inform the actions of employees within the company. I like to call it the rules of engagement. And some of those rules of engagement that contribute to an organization's culture are written and documented, but honestly, most of them are not written. When you think about something as small as the time that employees actually show up and the time that they leave the office, that is part of an organization's culture. Whether or not management trusts its employees to work remotely, that is organizational culture. When you think of deeper contexts, such as ethical decision-making, when companies celebrate Black History Month, for example, or highlight the accomplishments of its employees, when employees are not afraid to speak up and when they're encouraged to provide feedback, including constructive criticism to the company's management and its leaders, that all forms part of corporate and organizational culture. In terms of employee experience, it's very closely tied to the emerging concept of belonging. Employees need to feel a sense of belonging and a sense of connection to the companies that they're working for. They want to bring their true and authentic selves to work. And in your news report this morning, your guest talked about the slow acceptance of Black natural hair. But it is only when employees feel that sense of belonging that they are usually happy with their jobs and with the companies that they're working for. And the last thing I'll say is that the two are connected because employees' experience is a direct correlation to organizational culture. If there's a positive, supportive, and equitable organizational culture, employees feel that sense of belonging and they usually thrive in the company. If the culture is negative and toxic, that typically translates to poor employee experience, and that has a significant impact on productivity and the bottom line of the company's financials.
And you're quite right. Sometimes the culture is not written, and so we have to be very careful who drives that particular culture to have that kind of positive employee experience. So how do we organize it in such a way that we are able to say this is our culture? Lemar, did you hear me?
Oh, yes. So I think that without employees, there's really no company, right? And employees are the biggest asset that a company has, and they're the ones, driving everything within the organization. So the company's culture has to be really equitable in my mind, and that's how we really drive that organizational culture and that sense of belonging that I talked about.
And so, Nicholas, sometimes with that equity, there can be a level of, even though it's equity, it can be a level of imbalance, where it can be such where the company gives in so much to the employee experience that they forget who they truly are. So how do we ensure that that employee experience matches the culture or the culture matches that employee experience?
Okay, great. So an organization needs to know from the onset what it is about, and I think we've talked about this over the last few months, Pearson, in terms of the company values and the mission, and where the organization is trying to go and its mandate. That needs to be communicated across the entire organization. The organization needs to know what is it about for employees and people external to the organization to buy into it. Because if the organization does not have an understanding of where it is, it cannot chart a path to where it needs to get to or where it wants to go to. So once an organization understands its culture, and culture, like you mentioned, is both unwritten and written, and once that is understood, then employees can buy into it. And once employees buy into it, there's that beautiful harmony of employees working with the organization to execute the organization's goals and to execute the organization's mandate.
once the culture fits the goals and the mandates. Sometimes that culture can go completely south of those agreed
Correct.
mandates and goals. So how do we bring back on track and align them so that we both have a win-win?
So once again, that comes out to, we've been talking about this over the last few months, as like I said, having conversations. If it is that you are not communicating to your employees, because communication is a part that all organizations across the world usually fall down in. Employers or managers or leaders are not having the conversations with their staff about what is important to the organization and what is expected from the employee, and vice versa. Sometimes employees are so shell shocked, or the culture is such a negative environment that employees do not feel comfortable, as Lamar mentioned, speaking out. And that speaks to a toxic work environment and a toxic environment where employees are not able to talk about what is important to them. Because once again, your organization cannot thrive and it cannot flourish without your employees. So if your employees do not buy into the culture of the organization, and if they cannot speak out about things that they think are not necessarily working in favor of the organization or that can be improved upon, then there's an issue. And that is where there needs to be, like I said, that those conversations need to be, those honest and upfront and brutal sometimes at times conversations need to be had about what the organizational culture is and how it could be improved upon and what can be kept.
Lamar, let's look at when that organizational structure, that organizational culture is not determined by the employee or in consultation with the employee. What are the dangers that can be derived from that?
Yeah, so the one thing is that employees are the biggest asset that a company has, right? And employers really need to be listening to what their employees require. One of the big things that we're dealing with in the organization right now is mental health. We have so much going on in the world today. We heard some COVID numbers. We know there's the war in Ukraine. We have the earthquakes that just happened. Employees are fatigued. They're tired. And we really need those employers to listen to the needs of their employees and cater to them. If they don't, they risk employees burning out, experiencing stress, and that directly leads to lower productivity, and then that impacts profitability.
In the C-suite, their management is of the budget, their management is of the revenue, their management is of all of those things. And so you're saying, when your employee expresses concern, I need to take my focus away from that to listen to that. I don't have the time, they'll tell you. So what do you say to a manager who holds that particular position?
So what I would say is, for one, that a company that does not have a good organizational culture and does not focus on its employees will not attract top talent. And then, if that top talent is not coming to your company, that's affecting your productivity. That's going to affect your bottom line. So you have to look at that as well. The next I mentioned, mental health is real. If your employees continue to be stressed and experience burnout, and you're only focusing on numbers and not on them, you're going to experience absenteeism. You're going to experience your employees going to healthcare professionals. That's going to drive your insurance costs up. That impacts the bottom line. And lastly, I'll say that if employees aren't happy because of the organizational culture and just a focus on numbers, they will leave the company. And research has shown that recruiting new employees is a top cost, one of the big costs that will reduce your profitability. So in looking at those numbers, you also need to consider your employees, because the impact of the organizational culture on them directly impacts your bottom line.
I don't think one can underscore that enough. And so, Nicholas, when we don't get it right, we have a problem. So how can we now, going forward, improve the culture and the structure so that we can all benefit significantly?
Yeah. So engagement surveys are very powerful tools that organizations use, and exit surveys, or exit interviews rather. My friends usually send me a lot of HR memes in terms of when things are going wrong within an organization. Organizations usually throw staff parties or they give their staff pizza, and those things are great and those things are beautiful. But at the heart of the matter, they're not really fixing what is wrong within an organization. So organizations usually send out an engagement survey to see how the employees feel about the organization, what could be improved on, and then they get back the results. And then employees feel as if another year goes by and nothing is improved. So if it is, for instance, your employees are telling you that they feel as if they are tired, Lamar mentioned fatigue, What are you doing to remedy that? And pizza, like I mentioned, is great, but are you fixing the heart of the matter? So are you implementing flexibility policies? Are you putting employee assistance programs in place? Are you making sure that your employees are able to have those coaching discussions to help them grow and improve within the organization? Are you fixing what is at the heart of the matter, or are the issues that are really affecting the organization to improve that bottom line? Because at the end of the day, honestly, organizations are there to make a profit, but they can't make a profit unless their employees are engaged or their employees are somewhat happy. So you need to be looking at what it is that are really that is really affecting employees, and seeing how it is that you can improve that employee experience for them to make it better for your employees and for the organization and its customers.
From where you're sitting, HRMAB, Nicholas, do you get the sense that organizations in Barbados are truly doing what you're just talking about?
Some are, to be honest, but others are not. Um, um, there's a lot of room for improvement, to be honest, but I think that employees know where they're falling down. They know where they want to do better, but this is where HR practitioners like myself and HRMAB can come into play to help organizations do better. And with that being said, people that sit within the C-suite need to listen to their HR people, because I think people still think that HR is still something very soft and airy-fairy. But at the heart of it, HR is something that is very crucial to your organization. Lemar mentioned your human capital is the biggest asset to your organization. And if it is that you're not taking care of those people, if it is that you're not putting strategies and putting mitigation plans in place to combat their issues and to combat the people problems you're facing, then you're going to continue to face problems. So that is why I think people that sit within the C-suite really need to start listening to their HR business partners to see how it is that they can improve on those people issues within their organizations.
That is such a good point on which to end this experience. Indeed, it's been a good experience, by the way, Lemar and Nicholas. Indeed, thank you so much for joining us. I keep reminding you folks every Wednesday that membership comes with benefits. So if you want to be a member of HRMAB, then you need to go to the website hrmab.org.bb, hrmab.org.bb, and sign up. And of course, don't forget, when you look out for the boot camp, which comes up in March as well. Sign up for that as well. There are a number of pillars upon which you can stand, and so you will be exposed to those opportunities to interact and to face with different people in the industry as well. So Dr. Lemar White and Nicholas Roberts, thank you so much for joining us today as we spoke HR with HRMAB. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome indeed. Morning Barbados takes a break right here. We're coming back with more in just a moment.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.